Please subscribe to our channel, Pacific Front Untold, and be sure to leave a comment after watching a video. The so-called Second United Front in China was an alliance between the ruling Chinese Nationalist Party, or Kuomintang, KMT, led by Chiang Kei-Shek, and the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, led by Mao Zedong. Both parties and several warlords agreed to temporarily cease fighting each other for control of China and work together to combat the invading Imperial Japanese Army during the Second Sino-Japanese War, which ran from 1937 to 1945. However, although the KMT and CCP shared a common enemy, they were allies in name only, and in practice, their alliance was fraught with conflict. From the outset, the KMT and CCP were enemies with a long history. A decade prior, Chiang Kai-Shek had ordered mass purges of communists, and in 1934, CCP members were forced to retreat in the perilous Long March to northern China, where tens of thousands died. Moreover, the two parties deeply distrusted each other because of their opposing ideological beliefs and bloody political history. Ultimately, in December 1936, Chiang Kai-Shek was kidnapped by his own generals in the Xi'an incident and coerced into an alliance with the CCP due to the enormous threat posed by Imperial Japan. In the first year of the Second Sino-Japanese War, the United Front worked fairly well until the fall of Wuhan in 1938. Although the KMT and CCP's armies fought side by side in some battles, the parties generally fought against the Imperial Japanese Army separately and in different parts of China. As the Imperial Japanese Army's strategy shifted from an intense assault to a war of attrition, the parties became significantly more hostile toward each other. The KMT was angered by the CCP's guerrilla warfare skirmishes in the countryside because it felt it was unfairly shouldering greater casualties by defending cities. At the same time, the CCP took advantage of the KMT's urban preoccupation by rebuilding itself. The CCP's 8th Route Army was said to devote 70% of its efforts to organizing the countryside, 20% to fighting the nationalists, and only 10% of its efforts against Japan. Indeed, throughout the war, the CCP increased its military strength from a mere 25 to 30,000 troops to a little over 1 million. Conversely, the CCP was angry at Chiang Kai-Shek for funneling more resources to the KMT and the larger number of troops under his direct command. Chiang, who had about 40 armies to supply compared to the CCP's 2, did not want to give China's limited resources to the party actively trying to overthrow him. Throughout the war, KMT and CCP armies often attacked each other, undermining the notion of a united front. In January 1941, nationalists attacked and dismantled the CCP's New Fourth Army's command in what was called the New Fourth Army Incident, or the South Anhui Incident. The estimated communist casualties varied widely but ranged from 2,000 to 6,000 men. Shortly thereafter, Chiang Kai-Shek referred to the incident as a disciplinary action against the New Fourth Army's mutiny, since it had refused to move where the KMT ordered it, and that dismantling the New Fourth Army was a military necessity. Another strategy the KMT used to weaken its competition was to send communist forces north to fight the Imperial Japanese Army, so that the two enemies of the KMT would weaken each other. Furthermore, the KMT blockaded CCP-occupied land in order to starve them and render their troops unable to fight against either nationalist or Japanese forces. The CCP similarly undermined the KMT. In October 1940, shortly before the South Anhui incident, the New Fourth Army attacked a nationalist garrison of 20,000 soldiers in Guangzhou. CCP forces also attacked KMT guerrilla armies operating in Japanese-occupied territory, and let the KMT fight all of the high-casualty and high-stakes battles in cities, while spreading their own propaganda to increase civilian support. The adage, "the enemy of my enemy is my friend," does not accurately describe the KMT and CCP Second United Front, as attempts to defeat each other undermine their attempts to defeat Japan. Both parties refrained from sending troops against Japanese forces whenever possible to preserve their numbers for ultimately fighting each other. Both parties attacked and sought to eliminate each other. Both parties struggled to garner international aid, partly because other nations were doubtful of China's fractured and ineffectual military efforts. Throughout all of this, millions of Chinese civilians suffered displacement, war atrocities, and significant casualties at the hands of the Imperial Japanese Army. As soon as the Second Sino-Japanese War ended in 1945, the KMT and the CCP resumed fighting each other for another 4 long years.